ISIS into our country and that over 50 of them are still roaming free. This is a national security risk and a direct result of Joe Biden's failed far-left Democrat open border policies. In my district in upstate New York and the North Country, the northern border has seen record illegal crossings, including individuals on the terrorist watch list. The American people know what a secure border looks like. Under President Trump, we saw the most secure border in modern history, building the wall, ending catch and release, and implementing Remain in Mexico. This week, House Republicans will deliver where Joe Biden has failed, using our appropriation bills to return to the successful border security policies of President Trump. I also wanted to note yesterday, House Republicans released a report exposing Joe Biden and his campaign's illegal and unconstitutional collusion with 51 disgraced former intelligence officials, including signatories of the statement that were actively contracted with the CIA, and the weaponization was at the highest levels of the CIA to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop story. House Republicans will continue to expose this blatant and illegal weaponization of the federal government and hold both Joe Biden and his administration accountable through our constitutionally mandated role of oversight. Tomorrow, all eyes will be on Georgia, where the American people will hear directly from President Trump as well as President Joe Biden in the first debate. It will be clear to the American people that President Trump's America First agenda delivered the securest border in our nation's history, a booming economy helping families, small business, manufacturers, and farms, American energy independence, and peace through strength. Compare that to today, Joe Biden's feckless, failed, and catastrophically weak record. With that, we're honored to be joined by the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee Chair, Mark Amodei, to discuss how House Republicans are returning to strong border security policies through the appropriations process. Mark.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning. It's the border, it's the border, it's the border. House Appropriations, our subcommittee, Homeland Security, working in conjunction with our colleagues in the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee, have learned a few things over the last couple years of watching how money that has previously been appropriated has been actually used, or in some cases not used, by this administration. Therefore, this bill says enough border management, enough of those areas that were used as slush funds to transport people into the country to basically not do the job that they're supposed to do, and so they've been zeroed out in this bill. Also, you'll see that those NGOs, quite frankly, that were facilitating and playing key roles in this get people away from the border and into the country without screening, are zeroed out in this bill. Is that controversial? Well, it is with some people, but we quite frankly think that it reflects the view of most Americans in terms of restoring some semblance of border security. And while we're talking about border security, you also need to know that there's this thing out there called fentanyl, which quite frankly, it's not a secret to anybody in this room or outside of this room, that fentanyl is flowing across that border, and the effects in our cities and communities are devastating. Money in this bill to hire more law enforcement folks for ICE, and also for the Coast Guard for fentanyl battling, and with screening in terms of packages, people, trucks, you name it, cargo, to put our technology to work to do a better job of detecting fentanyl to try to stop that flow in the country. So with those things as it's the border, it's the border, it's the border, more detention beds, 50,000. That's 16,000 more than the administration asked for. That's 8,000 more than there were funded last time. And oh, by the way, ICE and Border Patrol, as far as their personnel, are very well taken care of in this bill, so that they have the nod, at least from this committee and this House of Congress, to say we value what you're doing and keep up the good work, and we're there for you. So with that, I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, now you're whip.
Tomorrow, I'll join the rest of the country in watching President Trump tout his record of historic success, while Joe Biden, he's going to have to defend his record of historic failure. I'm sure Biden will try his famous tactic of telling the American people not to believe their lying eyes when it comes to the devastation that he has caused in the past 3 years. But the American people are much smarter than Joe Biden and his political elite cronies give them credit for. They know the devastation Biden's failed policies have caused because they're the ones who have been forced to bear the consequences. It's hard-working Americans who've been left behind under the Biden administration's reckless economic agenda. It's families who've been forced to grapple with record-breaking inflation and a border crisis that Mark was just talking about that is killing so many innocent Americans. And we've all watched our freedoms be put in jeopardy by an administration that cares more about appeasing the radical members of their base than acting in the best interest of all Americans. Needless to say, Joe Biden's time in office has been defined by failure after failure. That's why Democrats are using every tool in their arsenal, including weaponizing our justice system to try and keep President Trump out of the game. But they are not going to succeed. History has proven that there is only one candidate in this race who can get our country back on track, and that candidate is Donald Trump. From rebuilding the economy to securing our borders to restoring American leadership overseas, President Trump is a proven winner. And it's an honor to support him as we work to take back the White House and turn my home state of Minnesota red for the first time in 50 years. The time for Joe Biden's failed policies is over. The time for President Trump's proven leadership is right now. And that's a contrast President Trump will make crystal clear when he wipes Joe Biden off the debate stage tomorrow night. With that, I turn it over to the guy who's leading our charge, our great speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate my colleagues for being here. And here comes our leader, Steve Scalise. We have a busy week here on the Hill, and I want to thank Chairman Amodei for the good work they've done on the Homeland Approach bill. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I just want to share with you a few other names that are very important to us and very important to all the American people. Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Chris Gadd, Travis Wolf, Aiden Clark, Kayla Hamilton, Laken Riley. These are some of the names that are becoming more familiar to people because they were just some of the innocent Americans whose lives were taken too soon because of that wide open border. They were senselessly killed by monsters who crossed our border illegally. Jocelyn is one who's captured the hearts of the country. She was a 12-year-old girl in Houston. She was murdered in cold blood just last week. Right now, we're averaging at least 500 gotaways every single day across that border. 500 every day. That's 194,000 illegals since the start of this fiscal year. We think that number may be underreported. We all know that it's a lot. And just one, let's say it's 194,000, just one of those 194,000 needs to have ill intent to put hundreds of American lives at risk. 2 weeks ago, 8 illegal aliens with ties to ISIS were arrested inside our own borders. These were terrorists that the Biden policies welcomed into our country. The only reason the FBI did anything about that is because House Republicans have been pressuring them to do more. I don't know what it's going to take for Joe Biden to wake up, but I can tell you that's the demand of this country. I wanted to wake up. I wanted to finally do his job, and we need to know how many more innocent 12-year-old girls have to lose their lives before he actually secures the border. He's playing politics with innocent American lives. There's no other way to say that, and everybody knows it. Our intelligence agencies know it, our law enforcement agencies know it, and even our enemies know it, and that's why they're empowered right now. With regard to the appropriations, we have to defend the homeland, and Chairman Amodei said so well, it's about the border. This week, the House will pass the appropriations bill for the Department of Homeland Security. We're also going to be passing the state and foreign operations appropriations to protect our security interests abroad, and the Department of Defense appropriations bill to strengthen our military and improve the quality of life for our service members. In the DHS bill, we're adding hundreds of millions of dollars to construct the southern border wall, billions to remove dangerous criminals, and the new Coast Guard vessels to intercept narcotics. We're also rejecting Biden's request for funds to encourage illegal immigration, because that's what his policies have done. We want everybody watching to see how the Democrats vote on these bills. I think that's going to be a very important test. Do Democrats want to protect our borders? Do they care about the loss of all these innocent lives? I mean, some of them are saying so, but they need to take action to help us. Do they want to support our service members and support American sovereignty? You're about to find out. So we'll see how the vote turns out. With regard to the presidential debate, I expect that that question's going to come up about this. Look, like many, I look forward to hearing Donald Trump lay out his vision for the country. It's a positive vision. It's a forward vision. He is excited. I talked to him, spent a lot of time with him last week down in Mar-a-Lago, and then on the phone over the weekend, and he's in a very good place. And I expect that you're going to see a sharp contrast between President Trump's positive agenda and Joe Biden's proven weakness. And I did a lot of media over the last several days, and everybody wants to know which Joe Biden's going to show up. And look, my summary is this: it doesn't matter if he drinks a whole gallon of energy drinks, he's not going to be able to match the acumen and the readiness of Donald Trump, and that's what we expect. Even if it's a 3-on-1 situation, I mean, obviously the CNN moderators have shown an open disdain for President Trump. Everybody's seen the tapes rolling of all their comments, so we know it's not a fair fight. But Biden's still going to have to address America's concerns about his policies of high inflation and open borders and appeasement of our adversaries. Those are things that are on the hearts and minds of every American. And I know he's spending all week to prepare for it, but I guess that's how much time it takes to figure out how to defend that disastrous record. Good luck with that. So Thursday night will be an interesting thing. Next Thursday is an important anniversary. I'll just close with that, and then we'll take your questions. But members are going to be working in their districts, and we want you all to have a blessed 4th of July celebration. On Thursday next week, we turn 248 years old as a nation, and if you're a high school civics student, that seems like an eternity, but for all of us, we know that's really a short amount of time on the span of human history. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. It's the strongest, most powerful, most free, most benevolent. It's not even close. And it's still an experiment, is what we have to remember. It's an experiment in self-governance. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it falls upon the people here and those duly elected representatives in the Congress to preserve and keep that republic. And we're serious about that, and the weight of it would be heavy. The burden would be great if we did not have great faith that we're going to be able to do this, and we will. Steve, you want to let me let our majority leader say a word here, and then I'll take questions. You want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad he talked about the debate, because I think record numbers of people will be watching all across the country. The stakes have never been higher for where our country is and where we need to go. And when you talk to President Trump, he recognizes the struggles that families are facing. You can see him. I was with him in Milwaukee last week when he was talking to thousands of people at a rally there, continuing to talk about what he would do to secure the border, what he would do to help lower costs at places like grocery stores where, the Biden administration officials, we just saw Janet Yellen yesterday acting like there's really no problem at the grocery store. Tell that to the families who are living paycheck to paycheck and who can't afford to fill up their car with food because things cost so much more under Joe Biden. They surely can't afford to fill up their car with gasoline because of the higher price of gasoline at the pump because of Joe Biden's bad policies. I mean, this is affecting real people. It might not affect the people, the elites that are running the government right now, and the folks in the Beltway that just seem to be immune from the realities of what hardworking families are facing. But President Trump knows those problems, but more importantly, President Trump knows how to fix those problems because he had a secure border before. It wasn't easy to get. You can all research the story of Remain in Mexico, a very effective policy that President Trump negotiated with Mexico, who was reluctant to go there initially, but ultimately figured out a way to finally sign that agreement. He got peace agreements with Middle Eastern countries, the Abraham Accords. President Trump helped negotiate those agreements. Today, the Middle East is on fire. The rest of the world is on fire because of Biden's failed policies. So I think it's going to be a robust discussion about how to fix those problems. And here on the House floor, we're going to continue to address those problems through the appropriations bills. As Representative Amodei talked about with the Homeland Security bill, so many things that we're doing here in the House to focus on how to secure the border so we don't have more terrorists come in. Joe Biden has opened up the border to unlimited number of terrorists. We just had another report the other day of terrorists arrested. How many terrorists are already in our country because Joe Biden opened the southern border? And so, as the Speaker talked about, when we have these votes, and on so many of these, unfortunately, Every Democrat in the House has voted against securing America's border. How out of touch are they with the American people when over 75% of the American people cite that as their number one problem? And yet Washington Democrats don't care about the open southern border. I think all of this is going to be discussed Thursday night. I eagerly anticipate hearing and watching a robust debate. And hopefully it's a debate that just focuses on the issues, and it's the two candidates for president that we're talking about the day after, not the interjections of the moderators. Let's actually focus on issues and how to solve problems, and I think that's what we're going to hear. And with that, let's bring up our speaker again.
Got a few questions? Yes, sir.
One of the concrete proposals that President Trump has talked about is exempting tipped wages from taxation. Is there any thought of trying to pass that in this House? If it's such a good idea, why not do it now?
It's a great idea. I don't know if we'd have the votes in the Senate, that's for certain. I expect all the Republicans will be in favor of it. We're going to be working on a very aggressive first 100 days agenda, as you've heard me speak about before, and lots of the Trump ideas will be included in that. I can tell you that his proposal about taxes on tips has been very favorably received across the country. I've been traveling nonstop. I was in 5 different states last week alone, over 6 days, doing just scores of events everywhere, and that's something that people are talking about. I think he's tapped into something there. I was a former waiter. Many of us waited tables. I'm sure you're all former bartenders and waiters, and you know what that would mean to us. I mean, I was one of those, Boy Scouts who, actually reported what I've made. So I didn't make much doing that, but it would be a great boost to people who are trying to make a living that way. And I think they receive it that way. And it's a great idea and one we're talking about, and we'll pass it as soon as we can. Yep.
What do you think of this inherent contempt resolution, Congresswoman? Do you feel that's a distraction from some of the work that you guys have going on in committees here with regards to other versions of contempt?
100% of the House Republicans, we just had our conference meeting this morning, everybody is in agreement on the objective, and that is to have access to that audio tape. We need it. We've talked about it here with this group before, is that we've got to have the audio tape to confirm what is on the written transcript. There's been admission that they edited the transcript in some ways. We need to know in what ways, and why is it so important? Because the special counsel had a long sit down with President Biden, and we have the responsibility of oversight and investigating the matter and investigating how the special counsel handled that and why he made the ultimate decision that he did not to bring charges. So this is a really important and appropriate thing. They've turned over the transcript. They have no colorable argument whatsoever on why the audio should not be accessible. So the Judiciary Committee, and I guess this is breaking news, maybe you know, we are going to file suit next week against the Department of Justice to enforce that subpoena. We'll go to district court here in D.C., which is the appropriate venue, and we will fight vigorously to get it. In the meantime, there are a lot of different ideas and discussions, and people are brainstorming on how might we acquire access to those tapes, and we're looking at all avenues. I've talked to Anna Paulina Luna and other colleagues about various ideas, but I don't think anything's been settled on as of yet. We're going to be as aggressive as we can and use every tool in our arsenal to make sure that it happens, because we have an obligation on the Constitution to do it. So, yes, sir.
Secretary Mayorkas is down at the Tucson border today, touting President Biden's 40% drop in the asylum process. Your thoughts on that?
I could give you 90 minutes on Mayorkas this morning. We impeached him for a reason. I think he's the singularly worst cabinet secretary in the history of the United States. I think he's lied to Congress. He's lied repeatedly in lots of venues. They engineered the open border. You've heard me say it before. We documented 64 specific executive actions that Joe Biden and Mayorkas, as his accomplice, did to open that border wide. And we all know the catastrophe that has come from it. We're going to be dealing with the fallout for this for decades to come. And even if we are able to begin the largest deportation project, as President Trump has discussed, in the history of our country, it will be very difficult to find so many of these dangerous people, because they have disappeared into the country, and that's why the FBI directors testified to Congress and said all their red lights are flashing. We're in a dangerous period because we have dangerous people here. When we went down to Eagle Pass January 3rd this year, we had the largest visit of congressmen down there. You've heard me talk about this event because it was so stirring to us. And they told us that estimated 70% of the people who crossed at Eagle Pass illegally are single adult males between the ages of 18 and 49. These are not huddled masses of families seeking, refuge from persecution in their home country. Most of these people, most of these people are potentially dangerous folks coming here with ill design. And I shudder to think that anybody, Mayorkas or anybody in his, in that chain of leadership could go to the border and try to pretend like they've done something positive for the country. They subjected every single one of us to potential danger and violent crime, just like the names of these innocent American victims who have already been subjected to this. For them to try to tout anything as a win is detestable to me. Detestable
Last
to me.
question.
Yes, front row.
One of the things that you ran on when you became speaker was regular order, and one of your tenets in that was doing a budget resolution. You guys have not done a budget resolution this year. You're already going forward with appropriations. There's going to be another fight over the top line number, apparently with the Senate. Because first of all, A, why have you not done a budget resolution? And B, does it have anything to do with the idea of doing 2 rounds of reconciliation next year, and thus keeping that resolution in check as one of those bullets in the checklist?
Well, yeah, we're trying to rebuild muscle memory here, and returning to regular order is a very difficult thing because it hasn't been done here in a long, long time. And when it comes to appropriations, you see us working very vigorously, very aggressively on a schedule that the leader has put together, and all of us with the leadership team to try to get all 12 of these separate appropriations bills through the process. By the end of this week, with the 3 bills that are on the floor this week, we will have 60% of the federal government funded, just with the bills that have already been done. So there's a lot of deliberative work being done on a very quick process, but an appropriate process where the committees of jurisdiction and all members have ability to understand what's being discussed and debated and to bring amendments and all the rest. So we are forcing regular order back. The budget reconciliation process is a big part of the plan. We've made no secret about that. We want to be very aggressive in the use of that within the confines of the law and tradition, but to use it expansively as our Democrat colleagues did in the last couple rounds. And we think there's a lot of promise for that. We want to cut taxes, cut regulations, and achieve real policy victories for the American people, and we think the reconciliation process is part of that. I went to lunch week before last, Wednesday, and met with the Senate Republicans. We talked about some of this at length. I think there is broad partisan agreement between the Republicans in the House and Senate on the use of this, and that we want to do big things because we need to do that for the American people. We owe it to them, and they're big problems to fix. So that's going to be a part of it. We're continuing to advance it as best we can, and we're working around the clock to get that done. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you.